Hello, Virgo. This is your reading for January 20th to 26th. And the guides are very, very specific in what they wanted to say to a certain group of you. Now, the first thing I heard in my head was, I wish I may, I wish I might. And then I looked it up, and it's a childhood rhyme. And I saw you looking up at the sky in this dreamy fashion. You were just like floating away on these fantasies, these dreams, these possibilities, and fantastical, kind of like a Peter Pan kind of scenario, like really fantastical, where there's no way they would actually manifest here on the earth plane. The rhyme is, starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. I wish I may, I wish I might, have the wish I wish tonight. But what Spirit is saying is, it's time for you, Virgo, to start living your life not in a fantasy world, but in a world where you can actually start creating your dreams. What they're explaining here is that very often we'll stay in fantasy, literally as a way so that we don't have to make changes on the earth plane. We don't have to engage at a level of person to person or deal with situations that might be awkward or difficult. We don't have to face challenges if we're living in a fantasy. There are a lot of different ways to live in a fantasy. It can be in your daydreams. It can be by reading novels and getting kind of hooked on Netflix series or any kind of series where you can just kind of lose yourself in it and often find yourself really relating to one of the characters as though they're real, or kind of putting yourself within the context of that situation. But the thing is, Virgo, you can be extremely romantic. And I don't just mean romantic in terms of love, but romantic about life. That's a great thing. That's a wonderful quality. But sometimes what happens is you get so caught up in your own romanticism that you don't anticipate what it actually would look like in real life. And because being an earth sign, you tend to like security, stability, things that are predictable. Sometimes it's just easier to live an expansion of your real life in a fantasy world so that you don't have to deal with potential changes and chaos that might come up if you actually make changes. You're not always great at dealing with emotional outcomes of changing your life. And so sometimes it will be easier to not rock the boat and to just let yourself continue to imagine what things might be like. I had a friend once say to me that when he was young, he had a pen pal who lived in the same region as he did, but they never met in person. And it became a very romantic kind of exchange, and she wanted to meet him, and he didn't want to, because he didn't want to face the possible disappointment. He would rather have stayed in that in-between stage of just sending letters back and forth and living the romance that way, rather than deal with the nitty-gritty of either not liking her when he saw her or being disappointed. And I think it goes farther than that. I think it really goes to, very often, what we're afraid of facing is our own vulnerability, our own failure, our own potential for disappointment in ourselves as well as in the other people. And I think that's particularly true if you've had any kind of history of disappointment, whether in any relationship, whether it's with your parents or whether it's culturally, politically, economically. I think those kind of disappointments can kind of anchor us into wanting to avoid any more chaos, any more disruption. And so it's easy to kind of carve our lane and stay in that lane rather than risk stepping out of that and being thrown off balance. There is a really strong tendency, Virgo, for whoever I'm reading for, to kind of give up your sense of power in moving forward in life because you're afraid of uncertainty. And because you tend to go into worry, but as you go into worry, that's where you lose your power. And as you go into not being able to make choices because you're afraid of the outcome, that's absolutely where you lose your power, because the power to create your life comes from your choice. So sometimes the choice is to not make choices. That is a choice, right? But you're being asked to look at that. You're being asked to look at, is this really what you want? If you are stuck in this situation now, the guides are asking you, check in. Is this what you want? Do you make choices that keep you in a restricted pattern? And if so, is that really what you want to do? Is it time for you to consider perhaps where some of these patterns of fantasy and delusion come from, so that you can step out of it? Because you need to check into, is that the truth? Is it true that staying the way you are is going to keep you safe and happy, and is okay enough, or do you want more? And can you look at your childhood and understand all of the different factors that were going on around you that made it unsafe or unhappy, that are no longer there? They're not part of what's the reality of your life. Your foundation is different now. You've created a different foundation for yourself. Those factors are no longer in play. And the child that you were, that's not all there is. You've grown beyond that. The memory of that childhood, the resonance of that childhood is not all that there is of you. There is great more. And you have power. That's the thing, is when we're kids, we don't have power. We don't feel like we've got power. It's easier to just make our own little world where we can create safety. But as an adult, you do have power. As an adult, you have the ability to make new choices, because you've got different resources and you have access to more resources if you want to seek them out. You also have the capacity to turn a fantasy into a dream. Fantasies aren't bad. If I can fantasize about an ideal relationship, for example, but it's not until I bring it home to my heart and say, does that fantasy serve me? That was a fantasy. Oh wait, the qualities of that relationship go back to childhood. I no longer want to be swept away and protected and cared for. I don't want a white knight on a horse. I want somebody who's meeting me eye to eye, level to level. I want somebody who's not saving me. I want somebody who has saved themselves, as I have saved myself, and who will progress forward with me. That's very different than a childhood fantasy. But the idea of actually wanting to be in a good partnership, that's a great thing to bring forward. Okay? That's just an example, not an advertisement. So, my friends, what I say to you, Virgo, is you're being asked to look at where worry has prevented you from really being able to move forward with a dream, to really be aware, be calm, be as neutral as you can when you're checking in and you're looking at what your choices are, okay? It's not something that you have to do. You're not being told you have to do this. You're being asked to question, because some of you are frustrated. This is what I'm getting, is that some of you really are at a point of being frustrated where you feel stuck. What you're being told here is you don't need to be stuck, that you can really choose to start asking yourself questions, and that you can move forward in your own time. You don't have to move forward all at once in a way that's going to totally destabilize you. Just start asking the questions without needing to know how you can make the changes. Once you start asking the questions, the energy starts to shift. And that is what you're being told. The energy will start to shift. And ask for guidance, your guides, your angels, your higher self, your consciousness, as long as you can really lean into that sense of being held, being cared for, being neutral, being calm, and trusting in a higher power as well, but your higher power as well. Not just higher power coming to you, but that higher power that exists as part of your true essence. Lean into that and allow yourself to ask questions. Be neutral, keep a calm focus. For those of you who want to start shifting, these are the things to do. Okay? This was very, very definite as I was starting to do it last night, and they redirected me to do it today. The same elements are here, but this is much more specific and much clearer than it was last night. Okay? So thank you very much, and thank you, guides, and have a great week. Take care. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all of that, very appreciated. Thank you.